Hello everybody, this is going to be my first attempt at doing a video lesson to try and help you out. I thought that this assignment would be the best place to start since it is a poem that is made up of like 90% made up language. So it is a poem that really needs to be read aloud, and since a lot of the words are unfamiliar, I thought I would be the best person to probably do that for you. So the poem that you are reading for your assignment today is called Jabberwocky. It is a poem by Lewis Carroll, who is known for the Alice in Wonderland series. I believe in the movies that they did recently, or I guess not so recently, with Johnny Depp and them in the Alice in Wonderland, he recites this poem. Um, Here's Lewis Carroll. That's what he looks like. If you care, it's not really that important. But the Jabberwocky does show up in the Alice in Wonderland live action film, I guess, if you could call it that. And that's what it looks like, this really gnarly dragon looking thing. Okay, so I have a bit of an introduction for you here that I'll go ahead and read. This whimsical poem about a heroic quest was first published in its entirety in author Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. That's one of the Alice in Wonderland books. Alice finds the poem in a book after she steps through the mirror into an odd new world. The poem's fantastical characters, invented language, and formal structure have made it a classic in its own right. And then note, as I said before, this uses a lot of invented language or made up words, so don't be overwhelmed by the amount of words that you don't recognize. You shouldn't recognize them. They aren't real. The reason that I picked out this poem is because one of the focuses of the lit terms, if you remember that presentation that we went through at the beginning of this quarter, one of the focus is the idea of diction or word choice. Diction has an effect on mood or kind of the emotions brought forth in a poem. It has an effect on tone or sense of the author's attitude towards the subject. So diction is incredibly important when the author is using words that we understand. But it's interesting to see how diction influences our understanding of a poem when the author's word choice is to choose words that don't exist. So here is the poem, Jabberwocky. 'Twas brillig and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves and the mome raths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the frumious bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the Magzome foe he sought, and so rested he by the Tumtum tree, and stood a while in thought. And, as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes aflame came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day, Callooh, Callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wabe. All mimsy were the borogoves, and the mome raths outgrabe. So that's the end of the poem. A very weird poem, as you heard. Again, remember, a lot of those words do not actually exist. So you might want to listen to it a couple of times. Next, I am going to go over the actual assignment directions because I feel like sometimes we have confusion with what I'm asking you to do, which is totally understandable since I'm not in the same room to answer those questions. So your directions, and I feel like we don't usually read the directions, so maybe having me read them to you will help you out. Directions: read each question carefully. Your answers should be specific, detailed, and incomplete sentences. I added this incomplete sentences thing in the past couple assignments because I was tired of just getting 1 or 2 word answers. And if you're forced to write a complete answer or a complete sentence, usually I do get a more complete answer. So our first question is asking, what tense is the poem written in? Past, future, or present? That's like grade school stuff. Hopefully you know what those mean. If you don't, please Google past tense, future tense, present tense. Past tense is things that happened. Future tense is things that are going to happen. Present tense is things that are happening now. And then the next part, what is the speaker's point of view? Remember, we have several points of view. We have first person, second person, and then third person omniscient, and third person limited. If you need a review of what those are, go back to the slides that I posted. I think that was probably on March 16th, I think is the day. You might have to scroll back a little bit. So one of the things that I want to point out for this question is we have sections of this poem that are in quotes. So in the second stanza here, it kind of starts, beware the Jabberwock, my son, all that is in quotes. That means that somebody is talking. But the fact that those quotes are within this poem means that we have an overall speaker of the poem. So there is one speaker of the poem who is then quoting somebody else within it. So these quoted parts right here are not where you are going to find your point of view. The point of view would be the whole poem. That would be like if you were telling a story to your friends and you're like, oh, I was at the mall the other day and I heard so and so say, I don't like that dress you're wearing. And that's a quote from someone. That's a very boring example, but what's in the quotes wouldn't actually change what your point of view is. Okay, the next one. What do you think the Jabberwock looks like? The creature itself is actually called the Jabberwock. Who knows why the poem's called the Jabberwocky? There's actually a Jeopardy question that somebody got wrong because they said Jabberwocky and the answer was Jabberwock, and I felt bad for them, but you probably don't care. So I want you to kind of just be creative. There's no correct answer to this. Use details from the text to write 2 or 3 sentences describing the Jabberwock. When I say use details from the text, I don't need a quote there. I just want you to go back, see some descriptions of the Jabberwock. Like the Jabberwock with eyes aflame came whiffling through the tulgey wood, burbled as it came. It's something that needs a sword to take out. He says the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. So that gives you some description that you can come up with what the Jabberwock looks like. I showed you that picture of the Jabberwock in the movie, this weird dragon thing. That's usually how it's interpreted. Here's another drawing, kind of very similar, dragony thing. And then this is an engraving that actually showed up in one of the original Alice in Wonderlands of what the Jabberwock looks like. And there's a person with their little warple sword going to chop his head off. So be creative with that. What you think he looks like, just make sure you're using details from the poem. Next one, question 3. This goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning of this video. How does the poet's use of invented words in the first stanza affect the tone of the poem? Cite specific words and phrases as evidence of the poem's tone in your explanation. Tone and mood are kind of used interchangeably. So I'm just kind of asking you to think of what is kind of the emotion evoked by this poem. Like if it was a movie, what kind of feeling would you get from it? What kind of feeling do you get from this poem? So I just want you to focus on this first stanza for this question. Even though there are words that you don't know, it's kind of in the same way sometimes when you're hearing a foreign language, you can still pick up like a person's tone. You can tell if they're angry or happy, or there's just some sounds in our language that just kind of sound a certain way. So for example, look at this word slithy. Slithy sounds kind of gross to me. It kind of reminds me of slimy. So that could kind of set up the setting a little bit, what kind of environment we're in. It's a little maybe dark, damp, mysterious, foresty, things like that. So that's what I mean when I want you to pull out a couple of words. You've got slithy is a good one. All of these. Mimsy, that to me sounds like a happier word. So just the overall picture that you get from this, pick out a couple of words and let me know. Again, they're all made up words, so there are no real definitions. So it is up to you. Just think of what they sound like. Again, what mood they evoke, what feeling they make you feel. And then lastly, I want you to try to define these words for me. So you can kind of do 3 and 4 hand in hand. So for 4, choose 3 nonsensical words from the first stanza of Jabberwocky and create a definition for each based on context, sound, and the imagery each word invokes. Use the chart below to organize your response. So you'll pick a nonsense word, you'll type it over here, and then you'll tell me what you think the definition is. So can go back up to this one, my example, slithy. I said it sounds like it's slimy. So I could say slimy, dark, or damp could be my definition. That's just what it sounds like to me. And when I say I want you to pick nonsense words, that's things like brillig, slithy, toves, gyre, gimble, wabe. Do not give me a definition of like all or were. I'll be very not happy with you. So nonsense words. This went on a lot longer than I thought it would, but hopefully it was helpful. If you listened to this video and you did find it helpful, the explanation, please put a comment either on the assignment posting itself or in private comments if you don't want other people to see it, letting me know that you liked it, it was helpful, suggestions for what I can do for the next one, so on and so forth. So that is the end of that. Have fun with Jabberwocky. It's a fun poem. Bye-bye for now.